of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. And I can't tell you how glad I am to have the opportunity to speak with the Chamber today after the release of Budget 2021. And I'm just going to break from the script already because I just don't know if we've included time for introductions on your end, or whether we'll maybe do that after. I should have asked that before we got into it. There are familiar faces on the screen, and I think Arnold was in transit and I think not able to join us this afternoon. So maybe what I'll do is I'll go through the presentation, and we can, and my colleague Amrit Singh from Queensborough is here as well, and then perhaps we can do introductions when we get into the question period. As I said, joined today as well, and you'll be hearing from my colleague Amrit Singh, the MLA for Richmond Queensborough, a little bit further on in the presentation. And I guess I just really wanted to start by acknowledging today the incredible challenges that everyone in our community and across the province have been facing with respect to the pandemic. And I know it's touched everyone's lives in different ways, but no question, everyone has felt the impact of the pandemic. I have to say, though, I think there's terrific reason for hope. It was a very good announcement this morning about our ability to move into stage 2 of our restart plan in the province, effective tomorrow. And our vaccination rollout is doing well. I have to say, New Westminster is really just doing extremely well on the vaccine front. And you might know that there's been a little competition amongst Lower Mainland mayors to see who can get their numbers the highest. And I'm pretty sure that Team New West is doing really, really well in that regard. And I'm very grateful for all of the contributions that the Chamber has made, that our community has made to keeping each other safe and secure as we move through this really unprecedented period. So our budget 2021, though, is really about building back better for today and building for a better tomorrow. And it certainly, we were very concerned to ensure that we were responding to the pandemic, but also working to ensure that we're well positioned for future challenges by investing in healthcare, by strengthening the services that we all depend on, and by building a bridge to recovery and the better days that are ahead. The pandemic will end, and when it does, British Columbia will be ready for the opportunities that come with recovery. And that is a powerful testament to the incredible resilience that people, businesses, and communities have shown and continue to show. So I have a little presentation here, which I trust you all can see. So I'm going to slide 1, titled Private Sector Growth Expectations. Everybody can see that? That's all? Everybody's nodding their heads. Great. Okay, good. So before I go into the details of the budget, I just to touch down on and situate us in the context of the broader economic picture. And what this slide shows is what the GDP forecasts were for 2020. And you can see that every single jurisdiction in the country, and indeed around the world, experienced significant impacts from the pandemic in terms of a decline in GDP. And you'll see British Columbia highlighted in blue there. But we also, in recent weeks, on the right-hand side of the slide, private sector forecasters have updated their near-term economic growth projections for BC to show a stronger, even stronger recovery. So we are positioned extremely well in terms of the forecasts for how our economy is going to recover from COVID. It's expected to be better than the national average, and it really speaks to the resiliency of BC's economy, and that despite the challenges of this past year, our strengths remain. BC enjoys abundant natural resources. We're a gateway to Asia. We have very highly skilled people. So with respect to budget 2021, there were a number of key priorities in the budget. We wanted to ensure that we really protected the health and safety of British Columbians. and that we, of course, focused on the province's response and recovery from the effects of COVID-19. So we took a very thoughtful approach across government to ensure that we could protect the health and safety of British Columbians, that we support people and businesses as we continue to manage through the effects of the pandemic, and also do the important preparation work so that we're ready to seize the opportunities that the recovery will hold. In addition to new permanent investments of $8.7 billion over the fiscal plan, we have also included significant pandemic and recovery contingencies, which is essential to keep us nimble and responsive to your needs and to the needs of all British Columbians as we respond. This will also ensure that the province can continue to deliver COVID-19 response and recovery measures and help us manage the ongoing uncertainties and risks with the pandemic. Budget 2021 also makes significant new capital investments in the health, transportation, and education sectors. Things like the hospitals, the schools, the post-secondary facilities, transit, roads, and other infrastructure around the province is expected to be a record $26.4 billion over the fiscal plan period. And we're going to hear more about that in detail and specifically about what New Westminster can look forward to a little bit later in the presentation. So when we look at protecting the first sort of pillar of the budget, protecting health and safety, of course, we all care about our friends and families. That's been our first priority during the pandemic, and about the negative economic impacts we suffer when there's a lack of services and supports for people who need it. I mean, if we don't have healthy people, if we don't have health in our communities, we don't have a healthy economy. This last year has highlighted the importance of strong health and mental health services. And as more and more people get vaccinated, we can see a light at the end of the tunnel, but we're not quite there yet. And we need to ensure that keeping people safe continues to be our top priority. Budget 2021 provides more than $4 billion of funding for health and mental health to continue to protect people from COVID-19 and to expand the services that people rely on. This includes continued support for the largest ever vaccination program in BC's history to ensure that every British Columbian receives their COVID vaccine. Budget 2021 also includes funding to reduce wait times for surgeries and give patients faster access to the help that they need, as well as support for seniors who have had, and especially, and I know that I see Allison on the call, and I know you've done direct work in this area, seniors who have had an especially frightening and lonely year. And there are significant investments in our budget for improvements in long-term care and home care. Budget 2021 also includes the largest investment in mental health services in BC history, which will help to build a network of mental health supports for youth through schools and new foundry centers, as well as integrated and child and youth supports in an additional 15 school districts, adding to the teams that we have already identified in 5 school districts. That funding will also improve access to and improve the quality of mental health services throughout BC. Will improve mental health and addiction services for Indigenous people, increase access to the full spectrum of substance use treatment and recovery services, including funding for opioid treatment, help more people get on the path to recovery with new substance use treatment and recovery beds. And the budget 2021 will also focus on building critical health infrastructure with $7.8 billion in capital investments to support major construction projects like new and upgraded hospitals. And of course, that's a big for New Westminster, and we'll be talking more about that later. But I guess just to say that I know that healthcare is very important for New Westminster. We, are home to the oldest hospital in the province. and a hospital at RCH that is one of the most important tertiary care facilities in the province. That hospital includes a new mental health substance use building, and we educate healthcare workers at Douglas College. So this is very good news for New Westminster in terms of our engagement with healthcare. The next slide speaks to supporting people and businesses. These are the supports that people really rely on. So as you know, every day people and businesses across our province are working hard to fight the virus and get life back on track. And we are working with you to ensure we can do that. We're continuing to invest in services that people count on. The budget increases funding in the K-12 education sector to support our children, our teachers, our schools, and families. And it includes free public transportation for children 12 and under, and that will be in place in time for classes in September. And that means that families in the New Westminster area that rely on TransLink could save up to $672 per child per year. When it comes to helping vulnerable people, we've learned through this pandemic that not everyone is affected in the same way. And for people who were already experiencing economic and social barriers, the pandemic presented an additional barrier to getting the help that they needed. And that's why Budget 2021 funds the largest permanent increase to income and disability assistance rates ever. And for low-income seniors, we've doubled the senior supplements rates, the first increase in the history of the program. Our government is also continuing to support people experiencing homelessness by providing more than 3,000 temporary shelters and hotel spaces for people experiencing homelessness, also to provide meals, support staff, and equipment needed to maintain safe shelters. These investments will help us continue to make progress towards meeting our poverty reduction goals of reducing overall poverty by 25% and the child poverty rate by 50% by 2024. And of course, we know in New Westminster, particularly as regards seniors, we have a high percentage of seniors in our community who will benefit from these investments. When it comes to supporting people and businesses in respect of affordable, accessible, and high-quality childcare, this is an area that I'm getting very excited about. We know that quality, affordable, and inclusive childcare is critical to families, communities, and the economy. And I heard from many people in our community about the importance of the fact that we were able to support childcare centers to stay open during the pandemic. That was really key for families. In 2018, we launched a Childcare BC to bring affordable, accessible, and quality childcare to families across the province. And since then, we have funded the creation of 26,000 new childcare spaces, with thousands more new spaces funded each year under the New Spaces Fund. Nearly 70% of those spaces are expected to be open for families within the next year. And the province is supporting 9 projects to create 357 new licensed childcare spaces in Burnaby and New Westminster. And we have built 259 spaces in New West since 2017. Our budget provides funding to create even more spaces. And importantly, it will help support the workforce behind the workforce with wage increases for early childhood educators. We're more than doubling the number of children who can get care for $10 a day or less through the Universal Child Care Prototype Program. And it also includes 400 new spaces for the Aboriginal Head Start program, which provides culturally relevant childcare for Indigenous families. And as well supports thousands of new childcare spaces through the Childcare BC New Spaces Fund. Just doing a quick time check here. Good, we're doing well. Now I want to just turn to talk about housing for a moment, and I know that this is an issue that is very much an issue we talk a lot about in New Westminster. It's a very important issue, access to affordable housing, and I'm I think we're all very proud of the work that our city council does to support affordable housing. The COVID-19 pandemic has contributed to the high activity that we are seeing in the housing market. With more people working from home, the demands for more space has increased activity. So low interest rates combined with a low inventory of homes has driven up prices. But we do, however, expect to see some moderation in the housing market in 2022 as the recovery takes hold and all orders of government continue our combined efforts to improve housing affordability. We've worked hard to tackle the housing crisis by addressing speculation, reducing rent increases, and we currently have a rent freeze in effect. We are also continuing to work towards meeting our goal of building over 114,000 affordable homes over 10 years. And to date, more than 26,000 new homes have been completed or are underway. Budget 2021 continues to fund new low and middle income housing units with funding to not-for-profit providers and provides $1.6 billion of provincial capital investment. We are also providing $2 billion in additional financing to expand the Housing Hub program. And this will help create 9,000 new homes for families over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, on top of the 1,000 units that have been completed to date. And if we talk about, the work that we're doing just generally on supporting affordability for British Columbians, I think, folks know that we made as a central commitment of our government, the objective of making life more affordable for people. And so Budget 2021 focuses on investments that will ensure no one is left behind as we continue to fight the pandemic and to move into recovery. And these investments build on previous measures taken to make a difference for everyday people in their everyday lives, including more affordable childcare that we are continuing to expand on in this budget, the elimination of MSP premiums, the BC Child Opportunity Benefit that families started to receive last October, but which will deliver full savings for the first year in 2021. The elimination of bridge tolls and student loan interest, more affordable car insurance. We've been hearing a lot about that. And so these measures and those in Budget 2021 all make life more affordable for people in their day-to-day lives. When it comes to helping businesses, Budget 2021 continues to provide measures to help businesses adapt and prepare to seize the opportunities that recovery will bring. We didn't wait to get support into the hands of businesses that needed help early on in the pandemic. And Budget 2021 builds on the supports that we have continued to provide over the last year. And these measures include the stronger BC tax incentive for employers that have hired or increased their compensation in the last quarter of 2020 compared to the previous quarter. More funding for the Grow BC, Feed BC, Buy BC strategies. The PST exemption for select machinery and equipment to help businesses expand their operations. And the ongoing funding for the Small and Medium-Sized Business Recovery Grant Program. Budget 2021 includes supports targeted for the hardest hit sector, like tourism, arts, and hospitalities. And those supports specifically include a $120 million to support tourism recovery starting in 2021, 2022, and including a grant for major anchor attractions that really help make British Columbia such a unique tourist destination. These amounts also include funding for community destination development grants that will help communities prepare for future visitors through new tourism infrastructure like trails and airport improvements. And we're supporting 1,400 restaurants, bars, breweries, wineries, gyms, and fitness centers through the most recent health restrictions through the circuit breaker business recovery grants. You know, I'd have to say, I think we've been very nimble through the pandemic in creating supports quickly and as they were needed, and really working with business to achieve that as well. And we've adjusted our responses as the landscape has changed. And that's exactly why we've built significant pandemic recovery contingencies into this budget. The circuit breaker business relief grant was a great example of this. That program was developed and launched in less than a week in response to the conditions we were experiencing during the third wave. And as some of you might know, we just added an additional $75 million to that circuit breaker relief program, and it expanded its eligibility, recognizing that the challenges facing hospitality, fitness, and accommodation sector businesses as a result of restrictions have continued, and that it's important. Those businesses have really stepped up to keep people safe. Our government also launched the $500 million major anchor attraction program that will support attractions through one-time non-repayable grants. We'll also continue to get help out quickly to those who need it when they need it, and we'll continue to support businesses through this challenging time as we prepare for recovery. I want to take a moment to speak about reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, because that has been a priority for our government, continues to be a central priority for our government. And really, reconciliation with Indigenous peoples is a cross-government priority. And our budget includes stable funding to support engagement with Indigenous peoples on a range of matters, including land and resource activities, legislation, and policy. And we are also providing more funding to create more childcare spaces for Indigenous families, deliver the skills training initiatives that will lead to long-term employment for unemployed and underemployed Indigenous people, to ensure that racism has no place in this province and in the delivery of our services. Our budget will also provide funding to implement the recommendations from the In Plain Sight report that was done into anti-Indigenous racism in healthcare, as well as fund cultural safety and humility training across health and mental health addiction services. I mean, we know that the road towards reconciliation and addressing racism is long, and our government will continue to work with Indigenous people and First Nations communities to create a stronger and more inclusive BC for everyone. And you may be aware that we at the end of last week, launched a consultation process on our Declaration Action Plan, in which we are asking particularly Indigenous communities to work with us and provide input on the very specific and concrete work that government will do as we implement our commitments under UNDRIP. So what we're looking at is a more sustainable economy as well through Clean BC. Climate change, no question, is one of the most pressing issues facing British Columbians, and we must make sure that a post-COVID future is greener and more sustainable. And Clean BC is our plan to build that cleaner, more sustainable future. Budget 2021 includes an additional $506 million in new investments to continue to reduce emissions and create new opportunities and promote affordability. Our budget's investments will bring the total funding for Clean BC to nearly $2.2 billion over 5 years. Moving on now to some more details about our investment in capital, because we're not just building BC in a kind of figurative sense, we are actually literally building a better BC. By keeping people healthy and investing in our communities, that's how we move towards a strong economic recovery that includes everyone. And our budget includes record levels of capital investment with $26.4 billion in funding over 3 years. This represents a $3.5 billion increase when compared to budget 2020. And these investments will support a strong and sustainable economy with investments in roads, transit, schools, housing, and hospitals. Investments like hospitals really across the province in Cowichan, Surrey, Stewart Lake, Dawson Creek, the replacement of St. Paul's, and of course, in our own project at Royal Columbian Hospital in New West. We're also investing in the future of BC through the In BC Investment Fund. And that represents an investment of $500 million to help high potential businesses in BC to leverage investments from the private and public sectors to help these businesses grow. And that will be will be instrumental in helping these promising companies to scale up. It will also support startups, anchoring talent, and keeping jobs and investments here in BC. And with that, on capital, I'm just going to turn it over to my colleague, Amrit Singh, from our neighboring Queensborough, Richmond, to speak a bit about specifically what's happening in New Westminster. Are you okay just to go on my note? Pop on my notes? Yeah. Okay, there's the clicker. No, I'll take one.
Thank you, Minister. And a pleasure to meet you all. I think the time has come that we actually get to see each other in person soon, so I'm really looking forward to that. So I'll go to the next slide. There we go. Perfect. I'd like to begin. My name is Amrit Singh. I'm the MLA for Richmond Queensborough, so I straddle two cities. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that presently I'm speaking from the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Songhees and the Esquimalt First Nations. This government recognizes how quickly New Westminster is growing, and you can see that in Queensborough, in the constituency that I represent. It's grown by leaps and bounds over the last few years. And we're continuing to invest in New Westminster to ensure it has the infrastructure it needs to match this growth. We're continuing to move forward on major capital investments in healthcare, transit, schools, and housing. Budget 2021's capital plan includes 65 new seats for students through new schools like Richard McBride Elementary and the replacement of the New Westminster Secondary. And a huge shout out is in order for the New West Secondary School graduates of 2021, the first class to graduate from the new school and during a pandemic, no less. Budget 2021 also includes continued seismic upgrades at Lord Tweedsmuir to keep our kids safe. And we're just able to announce last week the go-ahead for an expansion to Queen Elizabeth School in Queensborough, which will include 13 new classrooms and a neighborhood learning center with childcare spaces, much needed in Queensborough. This builds on the previous 259 childcare spaces created in New Westminster, and we're committed to continue to grow this number over the next few years. Budget 2021 also includes $1.24 million for the Royal Columbian Hospital redevelopment, which includes a 348-bed acute care tower and an underground parkade. Groundbreaking occurred, as you know, earlier this year. And we continue to work on replacing the Patillo Bridge with a new 4-lane structure, expandable to 6 lanes, which will open to vehicles in 2024. Housing is also, as the Minister spoke, an issue that we commonly hear in our constituency offices, and we have 140 units of supportive and affordable housing underway or complete in the New Westminster area. This includes 44 units of supportive housing located on Ewan Avenue in my constituency, as well as the recent announcement of BC Housing funding for the 96-unit affordable housing project on 6th Street for Indigenous and for Indigenous people in the Swahili community. And more opportunities are on the way for a new investment in the housing hub. I'll pass it back over to the Minister. Minister, back to you.
Thank you, Alman, for that. It's exciting when we see it all when we hear it all listed out like that. We're just about at the end. Really, just to wrap up, and I think we've got lots of time for questions and discussion. I think it's really just to say again that our budget is really about prioritizing the investments, including the COVID response and recovery, while protecting the long-term financial sustainability of the province by first and foremost investing in the health and safety of people, supporting our businesses, and investing in our collective recovery in a way that builds a strong, clean, sustainable economy. And I just wanted to pause for a moment to reflect on really the fact that we've all been through a great deal. Our communities, us as individuals and our families and our communities have been through a great deal. And I know that every one of us could point to a moment in the last year when we really felt like our world was turning upside down. And I think this global pandemic has challenged British Columbia in ways that we certainly never could have imagined. But I think what that has brought out in British Columbia and in New Westminster is a sense of incredible resiliency. And I just have to say that, I mean, Aman gave a shout out to the grads, the NWSS grads, and I want to give them a shout out as well, because I can't imagine what it would be like to have lived and learned through a year of, more than a year of a global pandemic, and have kind of graduated in these circumstances. They will go down in history for that, no question. But I think that what has really come to light through our experience is that, New West really came together. We came together as a community. We supported our local businesses. We supported each other. The way in which our local not-for-profits really stepped up was amazing. And I think about, groups like Family Place that continued to just shift their activities outdoors so that families would continue to have somewhere to go and gather with other parents for the toddler play dates. In no matter what the weather, and I can attest to that. They were out there in the parks in New Westminster in some pretty inclement weather, but families, parents and kids really valued that sense of community that didn't get completely broken through the experience. Our arts community in New West did an incredible job, and I was always, I love to go to the when they could hold outdoor events, or the events that the Arts Council held in the gallery in Queen's Park. The work to support, to make sure that our local our artists and crafters continued to have access to people who wanted to support them was important. Our service organizations like our Senior Services Society, Century House, Lookout, Purpose, all of those groups who made sure that vulnerable populations weren't ignored, who worked to really break down the isolation of all of those groups. I'm so grateful for all of that, and really grateful to the work that the Chamber does, because I know that you do a lot of important work in fostering that sense of community in New Westminster, and it's very, very important. So I guess just finally, we know that the recovery won't happen overnight, but we're going to focus on the things that matter to people, and we're going to keep making progress. And our government is going to continue to be here for British Columbians. Our budget supports people now to stay safe and healthy, and it looks to the future, a future with opportunities for everyone to be a part of a strong economic recovery. So thank you so much for listening through all of that, and we're happy to take some questions and have some discussion. And it's a relatively small group. We really could do a round of introductions on the screen if somebody from the Chamber maybe would facilitate that.
Thank you, Minister. I'm not sure if we've got somebody who is able to do introductions. I'm just going to turn it over to the Q&A, but I would like to encourage everyone who has a question to please click on raise hand, and then we can turn it over to you and you can ask your question on video. And that way you can speak directly to the Minister about it. So our first question, I'm going to go to Tara from West Coast Climate Action Network. Would you like to ask your question directly? If I could get you to unmute.
Good afternoon, Minister. Thank you very much for the update, and the strides that the government has made, regarding healthcare and housing, as well as, I think, transportation and childcare. My question with regard to the environment is, will there be any incentive for investments to move away from fracked gas in new buildings, to lower GHG emissions, as I know that the government is very concerned about climate change? So that was one of my questions. Thank you.
Tara, thanks. Thank you. Thanks very much for that question. I feel like we're back in campaigning and I need to have my whole briefing book here. What I can say is that, I mean, reducing GHGs is a very important objective of government across all of our programs. And I can't specifically answer your question about investments, but we can certainly get that, record that, and get somebody to get back to you with a specific answer on that. But I know that as the Minister of Education, whenever we are building a new school or building an addition, we have a screen for capital projects in government that looks at the impact on the on greenhouse gas reduction, and that's a key factor in making decisions about how we're moving forward. So that is a very key part of our Clean BC plan. And in terms of your specific question with respect to investments, we'll get back to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next question is from, I have it registered as David and Karen McGrady. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm not sure if you'd like to speak to the minister directly, or would you like me to read your question?
Oh, that's fine. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to speak with us. I had a couple of questions on there. One was with the wage subsidy, which is necessary. Is there going to be a subsidy for the businesses who are actually hiring these people? So in this time where it is getting tougher and tougher to recover, is there going to be a subsidy from the government to the actual business owners so they can actually keep making a profit and be able to employ these people?
Well, I guess the way, David, I'm not sure, what organization are you? I was just looking for your. It's hard when we don't have names.
I'm just a citizen in New Westminster.
Oh, okay, great. Oh, okay, good,
Yeah.
good. Thanks. Well, nice to meet you, David.
My pleasure.
You know, our government invested considerable resources to make sure that we could support businesses through the pandemic, through the small and medium-sized recovery grant, which many businesses, and I know that businesses in New Westminster, I talked to business owners in New West who were able to access that grant to keep them sort of going through the pandemic. And I know that many businesses have also accessed the circuit breaker program. So those have been really the key pieces of the support to small and medium-sized businesses that have had a big impact in our community, for example.
So is that a yes or a no?
Well, I'd say we've been investing significantly through the small and medium-sized recovery grant and the circuit breaker grant.
But not specifically in the wage increase.
No, will there be something to subsidize wages? No.
Yes.
There's the investment that we've made has been through the recovery grants and the circuit breaker grants.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from John Marks. Did you want to go ahead and ask a question?
Sure, I'll be happy to ask my question. Thank you, Minister, for your presentation, very informative. I'm actually on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, so very interested in what you had to say. Many of our members, of course, are small business owners, entrepreneurs, and of course, all of us around the table here are consumers. So I'm very interested in, you've described, I think, very well, the various kinds of services and investments that are going to comprise the budget. I am very interested, as I think others are too, in terms of the impact then that those services are going to have from a tax perspective on small business owners, on entrepreneurs, on all of us consumers. So in a nutshell, I guess my question is, what will the tax rate impact be on us as a result of the services and investments outlined in your budget?
Thanks so much for that question, John. There are no new taxes in this budget, but there are 3 previously announced taxes that will come into effect in this year. There's a carbon tax increase, PST on e-commerce and the PST on sweetened carbonated beverages. Those taxes were originally announced last year, but they were delayed. The implementation was delayed due to COVID. So those will be implemented in this year. And I should just note as well that actually just back to David's question, one element of our support for businesses around sort of supporting employment, the employment incentive, as I think you framed it as a wage incentive, David. It's I'm just reminded that we did invest not only in the PST rebate for businesses and $190 million hiring tax credit, which was a tax credit for businesses who hired back employees or expanded their available hours in the last quarter of 2020. So that's $190 million that's gone into that program to directly support businesses be able to hire back and support employees.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the floor? I'm just seeing if I've got any other questions in the chat. I've got a couple of folks who asked questions who have follow-up questions. Tara, did you want to go ahead and ask your second question?
Yes, I'm sorry, Minister, this is so heavy on climate change. It's because I represent this group as, we have a coalition of 300 climate organizations. And as we're, thrown right across BC, the other question is on transit, on extended railway or road system or infrastructure throughout BC. Could you?
Tara, sorry, I just missed, you broke up a little bit right in the critical part of your question. Do you mind repeating that?
Sorry, Minister.
That's okay.
Will there be any further investments in infrastructure in transit, regarding roadways and railways in BC in the future?
Yes, yes, there absolutely will be. I mean, I believe that we've announced the Broadway SkyTrain, and we're certainly working with we've also announced the extension of the SkyTrain from the line from Surrey to Langley. So those are really important investments, both in the kind of the center of the urban center of the Lower Mainland, but also kind of reaching out into the southern, to the south of the Fraser. And I maybe can just take a moment, because you shouldn't apologize for asking questions about climate change and about the impact of how we are making decisions, because I think that is a fundamental preoccupation of all of us, and particularly the generation that is coming up. I really actually can't tell you how impressed I am with really the kids in the Environment Club at NWSS. I have such incredible memories of the incredible work that they do to raise these issues, and just how I think deeply, particularly that generation, really feels the impact and in terms of what's at stake with when it comes to climate. I also want to give a shout out to our to our City Council and our active transportation folks, the Walkers Caucus and the Hub folks, who have really been engaged on the Patella Bridge discussion and have really wanted to see that important piece of new infrastructure really do everything possible to connect up with active transportation, because that is also an important part of I think of a green future. So there's no question, lots of work being done and lots of investments being made.
Thank you, Minister. Our next question, I actually don't have a name for this person. You are just logged in as iPhone. So I'm hoping that when you ask the question, you can please identify yourself and let us know who you are.
Hi, it's Sylvia Sam. I'm a realtor and I'm part of the Government Relations Committee at the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. Minister, this is something that we had lobbied you earlier in the year about. There were two issues, and one has to do with climate change and energy efficiency in the already existing stock. The government has done great work in doing a STEP program for new stock, but was a letter back in 2020 from the Minister of Finance. His mandate letter required realtors to identify the energy not efficient parts. And what is missing is that there needs to be a toolbox. And in speaking to Minister Eby and Minister Kang, both of them said that there is a toolbox that should be developed. Do you have any idea where that is, what's happening with identifying energy efficiency?
Thanks so much for your question, Sylvia. And I do remember the discussion with the real estate board. It's nice to see you again. I don't have an answer for you directly on that today, but we're taking notes about it, and we will track down the answer to that question and get it back to you.
Right.
Thank you, Minister. Our next question is for Sav Pellick. Sav, please go ahead.
Hello. I have a question actually for the Minister as well as MLA Singh, and I was wondering, as the pandemic is wrapping up, what are the priorities going forward for New Westminster and Queensborough included?
Well, that's great. Hey, Sav, nice to see you. I'll speak a little bit about my side of the river, and then I'll hand it over to MLA Singh to talk about the Queensborough side. I think that there are. I guess what I would say is that I think we're not quite out of it yet, and I think we're moving slowly and sort of cautiously through the restart plan. And I think that the priorities will continue to be to ensure that our communities and that everybody in them feels safe around how we are exiting from COVID. So all of the health and safety measures that have been in place in different sectors, we're going to be very careful about making sure that everyone feels safe and secure coming out of the pandemic. And as we sort of rebuild from the pandemic, I know there's a whole set of critical issues in my world as it related to my work in the Ministry of Education, but that I also think is sort of fundamental to work our government is going to be doing around reconciliation, around how we build strong communities, and some of the anti-racism work that will be happening. We will be introducing legislation around disaggregated race data so that we can better understand what's happening with different communities, different parts of our communities. And I think that that really connects to everything we're doing in health, in education. I also think it connects into how we are certainly developing our economy and developing good jobs. And really developing good jobs that are green jobs, that are accessible to everyone, that include an ability for people to access those jobs because we have really strong education, not just at the K-12, but through advanced education and skills training, and that post-secondary education is accessible to everyone. Is I think those are where you're going to see some of the main priorities, and that is all going to be framed really in the work that we're also doing about environmental change. But I know that Amin is just dying for an opportunity to talk more about Queen Elizabeth and the expansion of the school and childcare, so I'm going to let him do that.
Thank you, Minister. And ditto, I could actually stop there because she sort of encapsulated it all. But yeah, Queen Elizabeth School, the expansion, childcare, and we're going to continue to look at childcare has been a problem in Queensborough for a long time, so we're going to continue to look at more investments in childcare. Queensborough is a unique place because of construction costs, as you know, are much higher in Queensborough than elsewhere because of the Delta. So that poses some problems, but we're really committed to more childcare spaces in Queensborough. As we come out of the pandemic, and as the Minister stated, we're not out of it yet. We're right at the end of the tunnel, but we're still going to be in the tunnel for a little while. I think one of the biggest things that this government has done and shown is it's been very nimble and very, very reactive to the changing economic situation. And I think one of the things that we're going to continue to see is more investments in small and medium businesses, just to make sure that we recover, that these businesses recover, and that this recovery is fair and equitable for everybody. You'll know that Queensborough is really full of small businesses, and we want to make sure and we want to ensure that they have the proper tools to come out of this pandemic so that the businesses themselves can recover, but also that their employees have a place to work. Those are sort of really what's top of our mind. And as the minister stated, in the backdrop of all of that is the social issues, right? Reconciliation and our anti-racism work. Queensborough is a ethnically really diverse area, and that's really, really important work there as well. And Clean BC, the environment, every time we've spoken at schools, the children at schools, almost all of their questions are always about climate change and the environment and the worry and the nervousness around that, the anxiety that creates. And we're committed, through Clean BC and through all of our other programs, we're committed to having that as one of the lenses that we look at everything through, is a cleaner and better environment, a place for our kids and our grandkids to be able to live, clean air, clean water, all of that. So that's really, we're looking to the future, and we're gonna continue to stay nimble and reactive and be able to change our strategies, because we really don't know what's coming up in the next few months. We're hoping it's good, and that's it. Thank you. Back to you, Minister.
Thank you, Minister and MLA Singh. We're going to have time for one more question. I've got a few more people queued up, so I'm going to ask those of you that are queued up that aren't getting questions, if you don't mind putting them in the chat and adding your email address, and we'll have somebody get back to you. Especially, I know the Minister had a couple of additional questions that she wanted to do some follow-up. So if you can please make sure to include your email address in there so that we can reach you after this, that would be great. And our last question is going to be from Trudy. Trudy, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. So my name is Trudy Goals. We own 3 businesses here in New Westminster, and I just want to say I'm really pleased to see an increase in wages, and I'm really hoping our province gets to a point where we mandate living wages for everyone. However, my question for you is actually around safe supplies. So we saw the largest number of people die from the opioid crisis in the last year, and I heard you talk a little bit about budgeting for addiction support. And I'm wondering where in that is the priority to make sure that safe supply gets into the hands of people who need it? How are we budgeting for that?
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Thank you so much for that. That is a really, really important question. And I know that not only my colleague, Minister Malcolmson, who as the Minister of Mental Health and Addiction spends really every waking hour working on the issue of mental health and addictions, and specifically how to deal with the increasingly toxic drug supply that we have in the province. That is something that we are working cross government around that issue. I actually don't have the budget notes specifically for those investments with me, but I'm certainly happy to ensure that we get to you with the specifics with respect to where those investments are going to be, because we have invested more money than ever in ensuring that there are beds that there are treatment beds available, that we have other all of that we have wraparound beds with wraparound supports made available, and there is a strategy around addressing the toxicity of the supply. So we'll absolutely get more detail back to you about that question.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you everyone for joining us today. As noted, if you would like us to follow up with you on any of these specifics, do please put your email address in the chat so that we can make sure to get back to you. We have been noting your names, but your email address will make it much easier for us to reach you. Thank you very much, Minister. Did you want to say some closing remarks?
Sure. Well, I mean, and maybe just to say, because I think actually, Tracy raised a good point too around the fact that that wages are going up. And that we have in British Columbia a minimum wage that's now $15.20, that's important. We know that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's why we've made the investment in making sure that we have supports for working people during the pandemic as well as businesses. And that we are working to create the economic conditions where we have really sort of shared prosperity across our economy, and that that we're making those investments in people. So I again just am really grateful for the work that all folks have done, and apologies, I think I said Tracy and I meant to say Trudy. just really grateful for all of the work that your organizations do, that all of the businesses that you represent and that you operate have done over the course of this extraordinary period of time. And also just wanted to say that I'm very much looking forward to a chance where we can actually meet and talk in person in 3D. And you can certainly reach me, both MLA Singh and I, at our through our MLA email addresses and phone numbers. But I will have an office open later this summer on a new constituency office open on 6th Street, and we'll certainly make that known, and we'll look for the opportunity for some drop-bys and some opportunities to catch up with people over the summer. So thank you very much for everything, and looking forward to, both Amin and I look forward to a chance to catch up with folks soon.
Thank you.